కనిపిస్తుంది ఇప్పుడు. I welcome all the participants for day 2 of 1 week confederated FDP on Sciences and Humanities. I'm very thankful to the management, Balaji Group of institutions for their continuous support and guidance for organizing this national level 1 week confederated online faculty development program on orienting applications and conceptualized aspects of sciences and humanities. As a part of schedule, yesterday we have Director NIT Warangal, Professor N.V. Ramana Rao Garu, delivered on a topic called Effective Online Teaching, Online Labs and Online Research. I'm thankful to the participants. Till now, 4,500 viewers have watched this lecture on YouTube. Today, as a part of schedule, we have a subject called Physics on a topic photoluminescence biosensors for fast biomolecule detection by Dr. K. Shauri Babu, working as a Assistant Professor of Physics, Vigyan University, Guntur. Before he is going to start the session, it's my primary duty to introduce about Dr. K. Shauri Babu. I request today's coordinator, Mr. Manjur Ilahi, to give brief introduction about Dr. K. Shauri Babu. Over to Mr. Manjur Ilahi, the coordinator of today's program.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving this opportunity. And good morning to all. This is Manjur Ilahi, Assistant Professor of Physics in H&S Department. Behalf of Balaji Institute of Technology and Science and H&S Department, I warmly welcome all the dignitaries, principals of the college, heads of the various departments, and all the participants. I would like to introduce today's resource person, Dr. Shauri Babu, Assistant Professor of Physics. Sir is working as an Assistant Professor in Vigyan's Foundation for Science and Technology and Research, Department of Science and Humanities. Shauri Babu Kotikala did his PhD in Physics in October 2014 from National Institute of Technology, Warangal. The title of this thesis is Photoluminescence Studies on Zinc Oxide and its Nanocomposites. Sir completed his Bachelor of Science from Acharya Nagarjuna University and Master of Science from Andhra University. He has published good number of papers on photoluminescence of zinc oxide, silicon dioxide nanocomposite, zinc oxide, magnesium oxide nanocomposite in reputed peer-reviewed journals. Shauri Babu did his postdoc research work at IST Lisbon, Portugal through Namaste India. Dr. Shauri Babu sir published 20 articles in reputed peer-reviewed international journals. In the year 2019, European Molecular Biology Organization awarded him a short-term fellowship. Sir handled various subjects like BSc Physics, Engineering Physics, Solid-State Physics, Material Science and Technology, Materials for Electronics and Engineering for engineering and science students. Sir is also an author for Scopus Journal. He has been an active reviewer for Physics and Material Science Journal. Thank you very much, sir, accepting our invitation on behalf of our management and behalf of our convener, as a behalf of a coordinator for this FDP program on Physics. We are express our gratitude you, sir. Now I welcome to Shauri Babu sir to proceed the session on the topic of photoluminescence. Thank you very much, sir. Over to Shauri Babu, sir.
Thank you, Majul, for a very nice introduction. So I'm glad to be here as a part of this FTP, and I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to present a talk on photoluminescence biosensors. Now, I would like to start the presentation. Right. So, my talk is on photoluminescence biosensors, which is research which is in its infant stage. So, for photoluminescence biosensors for fast detection of biomolecules, I would like to start with all of you know what is a nanoparticle. So, if the size of the particle is below 100 nanometer, then it can be considered as a nanoparticle. But the exact definition is at least the size or dimensions of the particular structure should be less than 100 nanometer, at least in one dimension. Suppose if I take a zinc oxide nanorod, the length of the nanorods generally in micrometers, it is in almost all the cases it is greater than 100 nanometer. But if we consider the diameter of the nanorod, so it may comes under 100 nanometers. So we can consider zinc oxide nanorods as a nanostructures. So we have various types of nano structures, starting from nanoparticle. So that is considered as a zero-dimensional nanostructure, and the nanorods they are, and nanowires, nanotubes they comes under one-dimensional nanostructures, and lamellas or nanosheets they comes under two-dimensional nanostructure, and we have three-dimensional nanostructures like polar and so on. And we have the first one is a quantitative definition, and the second one we have another definition that is called qualitative definition. According to it, a nanoparticle is a small object that behaves as a whole unit. So a simple example, it will be very clear if you look at this simple example. That is, suppose if I cook a rice and if I want to check whether the rice is cooked or not properly, then what we do is to know the state of the rice. Then I take a single grain and check whether rice is cooked or not. So by checking the single rice grain, we can conclude the condition of the rice. So a small object that behaves as a whole unit means, suppose if I take a small nanoparticle, its properties in terms of its transport properties, they will be same as the whole solid body, which is comprised of nanoparticles. Then I would like to introduce to you about the photoluminescence. I hope all of you know. Anyhow, we just have some light on this topic, right? So in a semiconductor, we have a valence band and a conduction band. Both are separated by a finite energy band gap. When a suitable amount of energy falls on a semiconductor, what happens is electron, which is in the valence band, goes to the conduction band, and we have hole in the valence band and electron in the conduction band. After 10⁻⁸ seconds, this electron in the conduction band comes down to the valence band by giving away a photon of energy equal to the energy difference between the conduction band maximum and conduction band minimum and valence band maximum. So that we call as photoluminescence. So we induce the emission from a semiconductor by giving the suitable a photon of suitable energy. So the luminescence by photon is called photoluminescence. Right. Now we have 13 types of luminescences. That means we can excite electron which is in the valence band to the conduction band by giving various types of energies. You can supply energy in terms of chemical energy, sound energy, mechanical energy, and by applying the pressure and by giving energy in the form of heat. So we have 13 types of energies that can induce an electron which is in the valence band to promote to conduction band, and while de-exciting it gives away photon. That means the luminescence process, the luminescence phenomena takes place. So we have that many kind of luminescence process. Okay, so we are most familiar with the photoluminescence. Now, so how this photoluminescence uh, and nanoscience are related to each other? I mean, what is the influence of nano on the photoluminescence of nanoparticles or nanostructures? So it is a very familiar effect that is called quantum confinement effect. Most of you know. So according to the quantum confinement effect, if the size of the nanoparticle is of the order of exciton Bohr radius, then what happens is we can see changes in the emission if there is a change in the size of the nanoparticle. So we have two types of shifts. One is called blue shift. If the size decreases, then what happens is the emission peak shifts towards the lower wavelength. So that is called blue shift. And if the size increases, then accordingly the luminescence peak shifts towards the higher wavelength side. That is called red shift. That means towards the red light and towards the blue light we call blue shift and red shift. So in generally, so we prepare. So we generally reduce the size from larger size to the smaller size. So generally observe blue shift. So we have another reason for shift of the emission peak, that is called mass burst effect, that will be observed in heavily doped semiconductor. Suppose for a intrinsic semiconductor, the Fermi level is at the center of the valence band and conduction band. As the entire doping increases in a semiconductor, what happens is this Fermi level moves towards the conduction band maximum. If it is heavily doped, what happens is if it is heavily doped, this Fermi level goes into the conduction band. So that is the, so then what happens is if you supply energy, then electron should go an energy level above the Fermi energy level, then automatically what happens is we get higher energy or blue shift. That is another reason. Now we'll come to our topic, that is biosensor. So you can see the definition. So the biosensor, it measures a biological or chemical reactions by generating a signal proportional to the concentration of an analyte in the reaction. So this analyte may consist of many biomolecules, proteins, low molecular cells, and nucleic acids, and so on. We have various types of analytes. So what happens is when this biomolecule reacts with the transducer, and that reaction will be converted into the form of the electrical signal or optical signal, and so on. So and that signal will be detected by the detector, and the display will read that one. So if you see the glucometer, that is the very simple biosensor that has been commercialized and that has been widely used to measure the sugar content in a human body. So they take the blood and they put the blood on the strip. So this sensor is electrochemical sensor. That means it has 3 electrodes: reference electrode, counter electrode, and working electrode. So when this blood drop, it falls on that strip, the strip that is containing these electrodes. What happens is, so that strip contains glucose oxidase, that is an enzyme that reacts with the glucose and forms a gluconic acid. Then this gluconic acid reacts with ferricyanide and forms ferrocyanide. The moment this ferrocyanide forms, the current flows in the device, and that current signal will be converted into the sugar level of the human. Okay, so that is how this glucometer works. Now these are the important milestones in the discovery or the development of biosensor. So the first commercial biosensor or glucose biosensor that has been achieved in the year 1975, and another biosensor that is in 1992. So in 1990, so surface plasmon resonance based biosensor has been invented. So these are the important milestones. Okay? So in biosensors. Okay. Now we'll see what are the parts of the biosensor. So it has different parts, as you see here. It has 5 different parts. One is analyte. So this analyte, it may, but here we have shown only single biomolecule, but this analyte, it may contain, single biomolecule. The analyte is the biomolecule which needs to be detected by our biosensor. Then bioreceptor. So the bioreceptor can be enzyme, cell, applicator, DNA, or nanoparticle, or whatever it may be. So, or antibody. Okay. So this bioreceptor, it selects it, or it attach, or it detects only a particular analyte. Okay. So the moment it detects, then the signal goes to the transducer. That means the electrical signal or optical signal, or that means electrical property or optical property of the transducer will be altered by the detection of the analyte, and that signal will be sent to the electronic circuitry in the sensor, and that electronic circuitry process the signal, and that will be displayed in the panel of the display panel of the biosensor. So these are the various parts of the biosensor. So this transducer is generally a semiconductor material, generally oxide semiconductor material of direct band gap. Next one is, if you see the applications of these biosensors. Suppose if I consider water quality management. Okay, so in water we have some diseases. Say for example, typhoid. So this is a waterborne disease. That means due to the contamination of water, so one gets typhoid fever, and that virus is called, actually is called Salmonella typhi. Okay, suppose if we detect that viruses or bacteria which causes particular diseases early, then what happens? We can purify that water, and we can avoid the people from contracting such kind of diseases. So this is then prosthetic devices. Suppose if we take pacemaker, so that is one of the biosensor. Then generally we use biosensors for disease detection. Okay. Suppose if I want to, if you want to know whether you are a diabetic patient or not, then you have to check your glucose level. Depending upon the glucose level in your body, you can so it will be diagnosed that whether you are a diabetic patient or not. And so similarly, environmental monitoring, solid and food quality also. Food quality is also important application of biosensors, where one can know one can know the quality of the food or the shelf life of the biosensor and all those things. Okay, so these are the various types of biosensors where one can use biosensors. Okay. So comes to the characteristics of biosensors. The selectivity is the most important. That means, suppose if I take say for example water. In water we may have various types of bacteria or viruses, but our biosensor, it should be able to select only one single biomolecule from the various biomolecules that are present in the water. So selectivity of the biosensor is important characteristics of biosensor. So you should be able to select if there are 100 proteins or 100 some biomolecules, then it should be able to select only that particular virus that causes a particular disease. Then comes to the sensitivity. These are sensitivity. Suppose if 100 bacteria are there in the water, then if you don't have any problem with the 100 bacteria, then if there are 200 viruses or bacteria in the water, if they have significant influence on the health of the human being, then if our biosensor is not able to detect if there are 200 bacteria or virus in the water, then it is of no use. So sensitivity, suppose if there are very less number of biomolecules in the mixture, even then if our biosensor is able to detect very low concentration of biomolecules, then it has we call it as a very high sensitivity. So that is called low limit of detection, that is called limit of detection. So biosensor should have a low limit of detection. That means if there are very small number of biomolecules, then even then it should be able to detect. Next one is simplicity. So it has to be a biosensor. Suppose if you want to check the, if you see, you have seen the glucometer. So it is very simple to know whether the particular person has diabetes or not. So that is a very simple technique. So the simplicity in operation is also one of the important characteristic of a biosensor. Another one is reproducibility. Okay, suppose the biosensor, it should produce the same result of the same concentration of biomolecules in a given solution. If it is changing, then suppose if the glucometer shows 2-3 readings for the same person after 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, then it is it will be a big problem. Okay, so it should not be like that. Suppose if you take the reading after 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, and your glucose content is same at these 3 times, and it should show same reading at 3 measurements. So that is called reproducibility. Another one is linearity. Suppose if I have low level of sugar, then it should give some reading. There is another person who has slightly higher level than me, then it should show higher value for his glucose content. Like that, suppose if the content of the concentration of the glucose content increases, then the signal should also increases in a linear manner. So if it is not linearly increased, then it will be a problem. And finally, the most important one is the cost of the equipment. So which plays very vital role, because we have, suppose for example, if you take a solar cell, we have solar cells which gives at laboratory level, we have solar cells that give 40% efficiency, but they are not commercialized. They cannot be used as frequently as much as we use silicon solar cells, because the cost, it plays a very important role. So we can make a biosensor with very good selectivity, sensitivity, but its cost should also matter. So it should be affordable to every person. So these are the important characteristics of a biosensors. Okay, one is, suppose if we have to commercialize the biosensor which we make in our laboratory. So this is the classification of biosensors. We have 2 different types of. Okay, so one is transduction element, and another one is biorecognition element. So our concentration is on transduction element based biosensors. So in a unit, we have 4 different types, and among which 2 are the most frequently used, they are important. The electrochemical biosensor, which is the first commercialized biosensor and which has been used extensively also, because in which what you can see is we have electrochemical reaction takes place, and the moment biomolecule attached to the electrodes, then it may produce voltage or it may produce current. And we do have the ion sensitive field effector transistor based biosensors also. All of them comes under electrochemical biosensors. Okay, so by the moment biomolecule is detected by the sensor, the potential of the transducer may change, or electric current of the transducer may change. In field effect also current will change. So by measuring the current or voltage, we can detect that particular biomolecule. When it comes to the optical biosensor, we have here also we have various types. So if you see here, we can use the absorbance from a particular material, or we can use the luminescence from a particular material, and we have surface plasma resistance based. But the highest sensitivity is observed in surface plasma resonance based biosensor. But the problem with surface plasma resonance based biosensors is they are very expensive, and they use labels. What is labels we will see in the later in this lecture, and it also takes a lot of time. Okay, so that is the main drawback of SPR based biosensor. And we have another one, piezoelectric. Suppose the moment biomolecule attach to the semiconductor surface of the semiconductor, the stress or strain may change, and that can be converted into a useful signal. Then sometimes there may be changes in the heat that can also be converted into the form of a useful signal for the detection of the biomolecule. So these are this slide presents the various types of biosensors that have been used. Now you can see, I would like to just show you about the electrochemical biosensor. As I told you, this is the sample analyte. If you see here, we have the circle shape, and this diamond shape, and the star shape, and different types. Okay, so each one, each biomolecule or protein or anything, so they have a specific structure, and they have a specific antibody. So this particular protein or biomolecule that will attach only to that particular antibody. Okay, the moment, so these antibodies are bioreceptors. You can see here, we have also seen some of them in the previous slide. Okay, so enzyme, antibody, and so on. The moment it attaches, we have a signal in the form of electrochemical signal, pH change, heat, light, and so on. So that will be converted into the electrical signal. Okay, so this is the transducer. So we have various types of transducer elements, and mostly they are oxide semiconductors. And we have, now we'll see what is optical biosensor. So in optical biosensors, if you see the schematic diagram here, we have a substrate, and over the substrate the zinc oxide is grown, and it can be grown in various types of structures, over which we have to attach the biorecognition layer or bioreceptors. That's also called functionalized surface. So depending upon this biorecognition layer, so the analyte or biomolecules will be detected. So the moment light falls on the biosensor, what happens? We have a emission. We have a changes in the emission of the transducer element. Okay. Suppose, for example, I have kept here the photoluminescence signal of zinc oxide upon the after the detection. Before if you see here, for pristine zinc oxide, this is the black peak here. So zinc oxide AB, the moment antibody or bioreceptor is added, so the signal is changed. So that means the PL intensity enhanced here, and the zinc oxide antibody, then this antibody is detected BSA. Okay, there's a particular protein. Okay, and then there is further enhancement in the photoluminescence signal. Okay, so like that, you can see there is a continuous variation in the emission from the zinc oxide nanoparticles. So in we have two types of optical biosensors. Okay, so one type is direct optical detection, and the second type is indirect optical detection. So in direct optical detection, we have a transducer. We measure the photoluminescence of the transducer upon adding the antibody or bioreceptor and upon detecting the corresponding biomolecule. How the photoluminescence of the transducer is changing. Suppose if we read the PLP photoluminescence of the transducer, then that is called direct optical detection. And another one is indirect optical detection. So in indirect optical detection, what we do is the biomolecules is loaded with some fluorescent dye. That means we have some dyes like retin, orange, and so on. So they will give some emissions. So these biomolecules will be loaded with the dye. Okay. So the moment these biomolecules detected by the transducer, we don't see the luminescence signal of the transducer, but we see the luminescence signal of the dye. So we can use the optical property of the transducer, or we can also use the optical properties of the dyes. So if we use the optical properties of the transducer, then that is called direct optical detection. If we use the optical properties of the dye, then it is called indirect optical detection. So these are the various types of methods. Here I have presented various types of oxide semiconductor materials that have been used in biosensor applications. So TiO2, V2O5, tin oxide, iron oxide, right, silicon oxide, copper oxide, cerium oxide, and zinc oxide. And so among which zinc oxide, if you see in the table, important features. Okay, so zinc oxide is having more advantages, okay, over all of them. Another one is zinc oxide is it is biocompatible, and another one is it can be used to detect many types of it can be used to detect many types of biomolecules. Okay, and it is non-toxic. So this is one of the important aspects in any device which is going to be used in medical applications is its toxicity. So zinc oxide is non-toxic. So nowadays, to protect ourselves from the COVID-19, people have been taking zinc oxide, zinc vitamin tablets, zinc ovit, and so on. So it is non-toxic. Okay. And another important feature of zinc oxide is we can prepare zinc oxide by using various types of synthesis processes, and also we can also get various types of morphologies. Suppose if you see in this slide, so we can have nanoparticles, nanowires, vertically aligned nanorods. We can have ball-like structure, flower-like structure, porous structure. So like that, so we have more than 10 types of nanostructures have been established or used in various used in various types of applications. Okay, so this is one of the important applications. It is very easy to synthesize, and we can also make various types of various morphology nanostructures. Okay, and it is also cheap. And one other advantage, each type of nanostructures gives different types of optical and electrical properties. So one way is you can change the optical or electrical properties of zinc oxide nanorods simply by changing its morphology or its structure. Okay. So synthesis of zinc oxide, you can see you can prepare. We have hydrothermal method, microwave synthesis, low temperature synthesis, sonochemical synthesis, biosynthesis, and so on. Electrodeposition is also this, but it's not mentioned here. So we can make zinc oxide in various types. So recently, people have been preparing zinc oxide by using plant extracts. So one of my collaborators in Portugal, they have made zinc oxide. I have been working with these people at present. So they have been made. They made zinc oxide nanoparticles by using apple peel, apple flesh, and these are called phytochemicals. That means these are the chemical extracted from the plants. So person, sucrose, water, and so on. So by using, if you see here, so when we use zinc oxide peel, the structure is different. When they use flesh, the structure is again different. So different types of this material, they give different types of structures for zinc oxide, and their optical properties also they measured, and their photoluminescence properties are also very different. Okay, I have not presented here, but they are very different. So this is one of the these are the one of the advantages of zinc oxide over other semiconductor oxide nanoparticles, and more importantly, it is the very cheap one. So, and we have in this slide I have presented the biomolecules which has been frequently detected by the biosensors. We have various types of biomolecules. It is here low molecular compounds like uric acid, urea, riboflavin, dopamine, and so on. Proteins, bovine serum albumin, human serum albumin, and so on. Nucleic acids also. These biosensors have been used to find this nuclear. Importantly, this one group in Europe, they have been working on detection of cancer cells by using this photoluminescence biosensor, and we have also started working on that, and we did something. Okay, I'll present that in the coming slides. Okay, so these are the various types of biomolecules that have been detected by various types of biosensors. Now, in this slide, I would like to let you know how these biomolecules will be detected. So we have a transducer, for example, zinc oxide. So what we have to do is, suppose if I want to detect a particular, suppose uric acid or glucose or some protein. So for each biomolecule, it has a corresponding antibody. So if you see here, antibody, so we have an antibody, and the structure at the end of is, you can see, and it is different. And this structure, suppose we have an antigen. So suppose if I take this yellow one only fixes to this antibody. Okay, suppose if I want to detect this biomolecule, that is antigen, this antigen has corresponding antibody, and this antigen only attach only to this antibody. Okay, so this blue one or green one, red one cannot attach it to this antibody. So first one is in making the biosensor, we have to attach antibody to the transducer. Okay, then this antibody will detect the corresponding antigen or biomolecule. So in the picture right side, you can see so different types of antigens and antibodies. Okay, so each biomolecule will have a corresponding antibody. First of all, we have to immobilize this antibody on the transducer element. Then, if we put that particular transducer element in the solution, which contains many biomolecules, which selects and which detects only that particular biomolecule. So that is the detection. Okay. So this is called this is simply antibody and antigen detection. This is how. Next one is immobilization of biorecognition rates. Here also we have two types of immobilization process. One is direct immobilization of biomolecule on the zinc oxide. Another one is indirect one. So that is by covalent bonding. That means, so you can directly attach or immobilize antibody on the zinc oxide. So that is called direct immobilization. I'm sorry. And the second one is in most of the cases, or it may be difficult to attach antibodies directly on the surface of the transducer. So in such case, what they do is we have to add some other chemical to the transducer. That one, that chemical will make a covalent bonding, or will be acting as a mediator to attach antibody to the uh, transducer. For example, in our case, it is a zinc oxide nanorod. Suppose if I want to add antibody to the zinc oxide nanorod, I have to use the desalinization or cross-linking agents or phosphate cross-linking agents to add antibodies to the zinc oxide nanocells. So that this is indirect immobilization. Okay. So coming to so our topic is photoluminescence biosensor. So here I have presented photoluminescence biosensor for glucose detection. You can see here. So generally, zinc oxide give emissions in one peak in UV region at around 370 or 380 nanometer, and another one in visible region. Okay, so or that is also called defect luminescence emission, DLE, or near band edge emission, that is UV emission. So you can use either defect luminescence or visible emission of the zinc oxide, or UV emission from the zinc oxide for detecting the your biomolecules. Anything you can use. So you see in this slide, so the for 50 micromole molarity, 100, and so on, they have increased. So different for different concentration, the intensity of the emissions is different. You can see there is a variation in the emission intensity of near band edge emission as well as defect luminescence emission. Okay. So this is another photoluminescence biosensor that have been used by Whiter et al. These are the people who have been working on photoluminescence biosensors to detect the cancer cells. So they have they have made photoluminescence biosensors in 2014 for Salmonella typhi detection. The virus which causes the typhoid fever. So if you see here, the concentration of the Salmonella typhi as it increases, what happens is here we can see the intensity of the emission peak decreases. So they have used near band edge emission peak to detect the Salmonella typhi. And again, this is the some picture of the nanorods which they made, nanorods which are made by Whiter et al. They have published in first of all, there is cancer nanotechnology journal. They published this work, and they use these nanoparticles to detect these cancer cells. So here also you can see the emission peak intensity has been changed, okay, decreased. This is very recent work of Whiter et al. So in their work in detecting the leukemia cancer cells, what they have found is they have changed the concentration from 1 to 1.25 microgram per milliliter to more around 20 point something. But here 25 point something. If you see the graph PL intrinsic graph, how it varies with the concentration. So at concentration of 6.25 microgram per ml, we have they observed maximum PL intensity. Beyond that concentration, the PL intensity has been decreased. Okay. So what happens is, suppose we have a zinc oxide nanorod surface which is attached with the antibody. So as the concentration increases, what happens is the number of biomolecules that are under that has to be detected, they attach it to the surface of the that is the antibodies that are on the surface of the transducer. Okay. The moment all the antibodies are attached by the antigens in the concept. Antigens are biomolecules in the solution. What happens? There are no further sites for biomolecules to attach it to the transducer. So then that means that is a condition of saturation will be achieved. So beyond a particular concentration, we may not have a significant changes in the PL intensity. Okay. So in the picture on the right side, they have also checked how the PL intensity is varied if they increase the cells. So for 0 cells, that is 1, the second peak, red peak indicates the PL intensity for 10 cells, 100 cells, 500 cells, and for 1,000 cells. Okay, so there is enhancement in the peak intensity as the cell concentration increases. Okay. So in my work, what we have done recently is we have used the electrodeposition technique to grow zinc oxide nanorods on flexible substrates. So that means plastic substrates. So these substrates are ITO coated polyethylene terephthalate PTE. They are called ITO/PTE. Okay. So the advantage of this electrochemical electrodeposition is you can vary the aspect ratio. I mean, that means length and diameter of the nanorod simply by changing the time of deposition or temperature or concentration of precursors, that is zinc nitrate or potassium chloride. Okay. So in the process electrochemical oxidation, we have a reference electrode and counter electrode, that is called platinum counter electrode, and working electrode will be our ITO on the PT. Okay. So we can have zinc oxide film if we do the process electrodeposition at room temperature. Suppose if we increase the temperature at around 80 degrees centigrade, if we keep the temperature, then we have the growth of nanorods. Very simple. Okay. So this is what we have done for detecting the cancer cells by using the vertically grown zinc oxide nanorods by using the electrodeposition. So we have the polyethylene terephthalate substrate, okay, over which indium tin oxide is coated. We have different types of fluorine. FTO is a fluorine doped tin oxide is also there. Anything we can use. So PET ITO, over which we have grown zinc oxide nanorods by using the electrodeposition technique. So then we have immobilized monoclonal antibodies on the zinc oxide nanorods, and this structure, this nano platform, is used to detect the cancer cells in the peripheral blood molecular cells, mononuclear cells, sorry, peripheral blood mononuclear cells. So this is the process how we have achieved the detection of cancer cells by using the zinc oxide nanorods. So you can see here the X-ray XRD, the preferred orientation is along the 0, 0 direction, or in some picture you can very clearly see the zinc oxide, vertically aligned zinc oxide nanorods grown by the electrodeposition. In the higher magnification picture, you can see the hexagonal, very clear hexagonal tips of the zinc oxide nanorods. That is the electron diffraction pattern recorded from the transmission electron microscope. So this is another beautiful technique called fluorescence light imaging microscopy, where you can measure the lifetime of the nanorods. So in the left side picture, sorry. So Narayan sir, hello. Hello.
Sir, it is
Sir.
audible, sir.
How much time I had?
You can continue, sir, up to 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
10 to 15. Okay.
How much time you require, sir?
It's okay. I'll try to come.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. So we have a technique called fluorescence lifetime imaging microscopy. So in this, you can see. So because zinc oxide is a fluorescence material, the moment light falls on If a green emission is coming out from it, it appears as a green. Okay, so you can see rod shaped structures in this picture, and this is the top view of the fluorescences. So we have hexagonal tips. If you see the nanorods from the top of it, okay, and this is by measuring the lifetime. So the lifetimes of these zinc oxide nanorods are around 4 nanoseconds, which is in good agreement with the lifetimes of the zinc oxide. So that's how we confirm the presence of zinc oxide nanorods by using the fluorescence lifetime imaging technique also. And in the below pictures, you can see the cells, very beautiful cells of uh, globe-like cells, and you can also see there are some green spots on it. So that green spot. So in our work, what we have do is we have done an indirect method. That means the cells are loaded with the acridine orange, which has green emission when it is excited with 483 nanometer. Okay, so these green spots are from acridine orange. Okay. And these are the cells, and this is the scanning electron microscope image of the cell. So in the our work is different from the other work, because what we have done here is we have directly immobilized the antibodies on the surface of the zinc oxide nanorods by using its polar surface. If you see the picture here, zinc oxide nanorod, the top of the zinc oxide nanorod is positive and the bottom of the zinc oxide nanorod is negative. So this property we have used to directly immobilize the antibodies on the surface of the zinc oxide. So what we have done is, as I show you in the previous slides, of the zinc oxide is having very 9.5 isoelectric point of 9.5. Right? So what we have done is we have selected three proteins. One of them has isoelectric point greater than zinc oxide, and two of them has isoelectric point less than zinc oxide. That means they are less positive. Suppose if I take the cytochrome C, which is having isoelectric point greater than zinc oxide, that means it has more positive charge. Similarly, if we take HSA or myoglobin, they have less positive charge. So, we prepare a solution with these proteins, and we immersed our zinc oxide nanorod platform in that solution for 24 hours, and then we have measured FTS vector of those nanorods after taking them out from the protein solution. So if you see here, so this black one is zinc oxide, FTR of zinc oxide, and the red one is cytochrome C, and third one is even serum aluminum. So that is so for HSA and myoglobin, we have a new peak evolved at around 1650. Okay, but we don't have such a peak in cyto C or cyto C. Okay, so which confirms that means if the isoelectric point of a biomolecule or antibody is less than the isoelectric point of zinc oxide, then it can be directly immobilized on the surface of the zinc oxide. So if they are vertically aligned, if the zinc oxide nanorods are vertical aligned, so this is how we confirmed whether we can directly immobilize the antibody on the zinc oxide surface or not. Okay, so with this result, we have confirmed that they can be directly immobilized on the surface of the zinc oxide nanorod. So some picture you can see here after adding the antibodies, so it is completely different from the original some picture of the zinc oxide, and we have also confirmed the presence of this or immobilization of monoclonal antibodies on the zinc oxide surface by using the UV visible absorption. So you can see here, generally zinc oxide has UV peak absorption peak at around 360 nanometer. So we have a absorption at 360 nanometer. Okay. First, then what we have done is we have just trying to attach PBMCs directly to the zinc oxide, and we have taken the absorption spectrum. So there is no change in the absorption peak of the zinc oxide. That means PBMCs are not attached to the zinc oxide. So directly we cannot attach PBMCs to the zinc oxide. But when we see when we attach monoclonal antibodies to the zinc oxide, so we lost the absorption peak. That means that itself indicates monoclonal antibodies have successfully attached to the zinc oxide nanorods. Again, we have also measured zinc oxide plus monoclonal antibodies plus PBMCs. Then also we have not seen an absorption peak of zinc oxide. That itself confirms the direct immobilization of these antibodies NKP30. What we have used is NKP30 on zinc oxide nanorod surface. So this is the as I told you, we have used indirect optical detection. That means these PBMC cells were loaded with actinic orange, and we have measured the actinic orange photoluminescence, which has generally which has emission in green peak. In green region. Okay, so we can see the variation of photoluminescence peak positions and intensity after and before the addition of monoclonal antibodies and cells. So this is the another confirmation where we can confirm the detection of these PBMCs by zinc oxide nanodisc fluorescence lifetime imaging technique. You can see the cell there. Okay, and then lifetimes for zinc oxide, the lifetimes around 4 nanoseconds, but here the lifetimes we got are 1.6 nanoseconds, 2.6. They are belong to the cyclidine orange and PBMCs. So this is how we confirmed the we have detected these cancer cells by using this zinc so this particular blood mononuclear cells or they are collected from the healthy human and the antibodies the antibodies which we used is NKP30 monoclonal antibodies. Okay, by using them we have successfully detected, and this work is under revision in Nature journal. Okay, I hope it will be published soon in so okay, so this is the summary of my work or what we have done. Okay, so we have directly immobilized antibodies on the surface of zinc oxide nanorods, so without any extra procedures for covalent bonding. So otherwise we have to buy those markers or labels, and we have to attach. We have to use them as a mediators for antibodies and zinc oxide. Without using all such things, we have directly immobilized antibodies on the surface of the zinc oxide nanorods. So the monoclonal antibodies. So the antibodies we have used here NKP30. They have they are specifically their selectivity is very good in detecting the PBMs, peripheral blood mononuclear cells. Okay, so this challenge of immobilizing large quantities, and one more thing is we have attached and detected very large quantities of PBMs. That has been also achieved in our by using our zinc oxide nanorod monoclonal antibody platform. Okay, so with this I would like to conclude. So my collaborators from my Institute Superior Technico, Martha's, and I thank them both for providing me fellowships. Okay, thank you for your patience. Hello.
Thank you very much, Shauri Babu sir, for your nice session.
Host में visible is
1 minute. One minute, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. It is audible, sir. 1 minute, sir. Manjur, you can.
okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable informative session on this photoluminescence of nanoparticles and nanocomposites. And thank you very much once again, sir, from the Balaji Group of Institutions Management. And some more queries and this regarding this session. Sorry, Babu, sir. Audible, sir?
Yeah. So yeah. So the
one
session is open for discussion. If you have any doubts, you can ask
okay.
me. So if I'm able, I can.
Okay, sir. There is a question from the Phanindra Mechanical HOD of which can we utilize these biosensors in detection of COVID-19? And what are the applications of Army of these biosensors?
Army bio applications, I don't know, but yeah, you can use these biosensors for COVID-19.
Yes, sir.
For detecting the COVID-19. Yeah. So what we need is, so for COVID-19 virus, it has its corresponding antibody. That antibody should be immobilized on the zinc surface, and this setup should be placed in a solution where this SARS-CoV coronavirus viruses are present. Then we have to check whether it is detecting or not. Yeah, we can use.
Okay, sir. And say two more questions from Santosh Patra, assistant professor. He says that whether the outgoing cancer cells detected by the biosensor or not.
Yeah. We have been detected cancer cells. See, in every human being blood, there are 5 to 6% of cancer cells. When we call a person has cancer, if the percentage of these cells is increased beyond 5 to 6%, then it forms a tumor. So then that particular person is diagnosed as a cancer patient. Okay. So we have so these regular molecular blood cells, okay, and that whatever the antibodies we have been used, they are these antibodies are they will detect the cancer cells. Okay, so the cancer cells, they have corresponding antibodies, and that antibody should be immobilized on surface. So the NKP30 monoclonal antibody is one type of antibody which is related to the cancer cells. Yeah.
One more query from the Kumaraswamy Mudam. Whether the replacing of zinc with other material like platinum or gold is possible?
Platinum or gold? Platinum is not a semiconductor, or gold is not a semiconductor. And if they have emission, they can use platinum or gold, but they are very, very expensive than zinc. So as I told you, cost is also plays a very important role in commercialization of a particular biosensor. So we may have a good signal by using the gold or platinum, but cost may not be affordable. So it is of no use. But what people do is, suppose they told you surface plasmon resistance. So in that, gold nanoparticles are used, but in a very less quantity. So it can be used.
Okay. One more query from the same person, sir. Were nanoparticles used as a catalytic in many organic transformations?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
Where nanoparticles? Yes. Were nanoparticles used as a catalytic in many organic transformations? we can use the nanoparticles as a catalyst in organic compound.
Yeah. Nanoparticles have been used as a catalyst. See, the general role of nanoparticles is they are catalysts. Suppose if you take a photocatalytic reaction, okay, so because of the high surface area, these nano surfaces are very reactive and they will induce the reactions. So they have been used in as a catalyst. Yes, nanoparticles, nanowise, various types of in photocatalytic reactions they have been used.
One more query, sir. Dr. Rajamouli Budula, sir. What are the functional groups are responsible majorly to act as a sensor for biofield?
Functional groups means what does it mean? I don't get. Hello? Can you
What
please
are
repeat?
the yes sir, once again I forgot. Yeah, yes sir. What are the functional groups are responsible majorly to act as a sensor for biofield?
I'm sorry, I don't have any idea.
I request all the participants, while posting your questions, you please write completely, because some of the questions are not in the framing of the question is not clear, so that it will be difficult to understand the resource person. I request all the participants, you please write in detail, you write the question. Thank you.
Okay, sir. One more from the Vaishali Kamath. What is the full form of film? FILIM.
Fluorescence lifetime imaging microscopy.
So, pardon, sir, once again.
Fluorescence lifetime imaging microscopy.
Okay, sir. And one more query from my side, sir. In nanoparticle fabrication, you are explaining about the deposition method, yes, sir?
Electrodeposition, yeah.
Nano zinc nanocomposite. Electrodeposition method. Can we go for the chemical vapor deposition or physical vapor deposition or sol gel method?
Yeah, you can go. See, we have physical methods like thermal evaporation, pulsed laser deposition, sputtering, magneton sputtering. All these are comes under physical methods. Okay, so sol gel method, hydrothermal method. These are chemical vapor deposition. These are comes under the chemical methods. Electrodeposition. All these are comes under the chemical methods. Yeah, we have both physical methods as well as chemical routes also for preparation of zinc oxide nanostructures.
But using this method, we can produce the same spectrum of the wavelength of this zinc oxide material, sir?
No, that you cannot say. You see, suppose if you use the same method, and if you prepare the same structures, we don't have guarantee that you get the same spectrum. So because that depends upon the quality of the sample. Okay, if you have more number of defects, then you may have defect luminescence. If you don't have defects, then you may have a very strong emission, near banded emission. That we cannot guarantee. So if you use different methods, then the emission will be different.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for your informative session. And over to Narayan, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shaur Babu, sir. Still some participants, if they have any questions, sir, will you help us, sir? Will you share your details so that it will be...
Yeah. If you have any queries, then you can mail me or you can...
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I request Mrs. D. Srilata ma'am to give the vote of thanks for day 2.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm privileged to say vote of thanks on behalf of the Honorable Chairman Balaji Group of Institutions, Dr. Rajendra Prasad Reddy Garu, Secretary of Balaji Group of Institutions, Dr. Rajeshwar Reddy Garu, Principal Professor Dr. Hariharan Garu, Head of the Department of Humanities and Science and convener of this FDP program, Dr. V. Narayana Garu, and other heads of the departments, coordinators, faculty members of Balaji Group of Institutions, and all the participants across India, express my gratitude to the resource person and inspiration, Dr. K. Chavibabu Garu, Assistant Professor in Vijnana University, Guntur, for delivering a lecture on photoluminescence biosensors for fast biomolecule detection. This discussion is very insightful and give an overview of how the research in physics has applications in biological science. Sir, your research inputs will definitely inspire the participants to take up research activities in this domain. Thank you, sir. Once again, I express my thanks to our chairman, sir, secretary, sir, principal, sir, head of the departments of HNS, and heads of all the departments, faculty members, participants, and special thanks to press and media persons for organizing this FTP successfully. I request Dr. Narayana Garu to make concluding remarks.
I personally thank to Dr. K. Chavibabu Garu for your valuable time and time for us. I'm really thank you, sir. Though you are busy, but when we approached, you accepted our request. I personally, on behalf of management, I'm giving my personal thanks to you, sir. Thank you for your time, sir. And regarding
Thank
the
you.
feedback, just now I posted today's feedback link in the YouTube chat box. Most of the participants, they are raising the doubt regarding the attendance topic. As we are posting YouTube link, the live link in the YouTube chat box, really we don't know how many are watching. So while you are watching the YouTube, we informed you, please write your name, college name, designation, etc. So that will be considered as the attendance. Today we are very happy. Most of the participants, I thank Chavibabu sir. Most of the participants, they have given the wonderful feedback regarding nowadays in this pandemic situation, whatever the topic which is really useful for the society. People are really, they are in a pandemic mode, panic, we can say. So the biosensors, you have taken a real application. I'm very thankful to you, sir. I hope all the participants have understood today's session. And coming to tomorrow, tomorrow we have a lecture on chemistry by Dr. E. Lakshmi Narayan Garu, Associate Professor of Chemistry, Srinidhi Institute of Technology and Science, Hyderabad, on a topic called Advances in Corrosion Science Applications in Engineering. I request all the participants, please make use of these lectures. And some of the participants, they have raised about yesterday's material. Already we contacted NIT director. Today evening, we are going to provide complete material on day 1 and day 2 in Telegram group. If you have still any queries, you please feel free to raise your questions in the Telegram group or personally to me. With this, we'll close this meeting. Thank you once again. I thank Dr. K. Chavibabu Garu for your wonderful time again, and all the participants for joining in this live stream. Thank you all.